Thank you for joining us again and welcome back to EDUSPLORER. Folks, listen. The geopolitical landscape has completely shifted and Africa is embracing a whole new dimension. I want to talk about value addition. I have an important video to play today. But listen, value addition in your products can transform a region, a country, the lives of farmers, revenue generation, growth, investment, job creation, huge manufacturing. Why am I talking about this? It is important to know that African nations have significantly abandoned or abdicated the area of adding values to their products. And their geopolitical partners have taken advantage of this, and they know it. If you do not, I heard a lot of analysts talking about African products and raw materials. Your geopolitical partners and the businesses and companies in their countries, they understand the importance of value addition. The G20 meeting is a very important forum that some of these issues came up. And the current finance ministers talking about a lot of other very important things. Africa must to an extent become a little bit competitive. It must start with value addition. Adding a little bit of value to your product enhances the brand, the value, the processes. You can increase the prices. It's simple economics. If you do not enhance your value, increase the product processing, you take the entire raw materials and give it to your partner or the company that's operating in your region, it's exported to North America or to Europe or to Asia or to the Middle East. They will process it there and then at the cost of that processing, export the same products back to your country at a higher price. It's so simple. So this issue of value addition is something that should be cracking the governments across the region and agricultural experts, product development experts, all of those guys at the African Union. I wonder what you guys are doing, because value addition should be an essential element on the geopolitical spectrum. That's where you begin to elaborate and you measure yourself in terms of competitiveness. Africa needs to wake up. That's the reason why the president of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, was talking to the big guys, banks, Golman Sach and the rest, discussing this issue. But he went ahead to zoom to this particular value addition and said this is a critical issue in the continent of Africa if the continent have to transform. Every continent is engaged in this, but the president was talking about the importance of value addition that is not negotiable at this time when we see countries practicing protectionism, looking at Africa as a resource, raw material continent. Africa needs to cut that cord to become relevant. It is about time the strategy changes. And I think value addition is one of those aspects. Let's roll the clip.
The minerals, the critical minerals should be treated, and how the world should start interfacing with minerals. Do we continue being extractive economies for minerals, or do we now move to, say, the secondary level, from the primary, secondary, and eventually tertiary, where we beneficiate our minerals? And on this we speak on behalf of Africa, because Africa is the one place where the whole world is just clamoring to extract minerals. And we say,
but you want to go up the value chain.
We want to go up the value chain. There's another process that we need to embark upon.
In this same interview, Mr. Ramaphosa was talking about the notion that African countries cannot take positions on international matter. I find that very interesting because Eritrea, a number of countries in the continent of Africa, South Africa itself, came under tremendous pressure from a major superpower, the United States of America. Whether that was through COVID period, that was through the United Nations, or that was through the war in Ukraine, or Africa's own independent position on a awful lot of very important things. And as a continent that does not have veto power at the United Nations that has no strength to defend itself. Others make decisions on its behalf. And you expect that at all times they should follow international major superpowers' direction. I think that we fail to understand how international relations work. That we're taking out from the equation that African countries do not have interest. That's the reason why Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa was talking about the non-aligned stand. That despite the pressure put on the continent of Africa, they, South Africa and other countries, would not shake an inch in terms of their particular position that they are standing. And this is important in today's global engagement. Africa should make its position stand because that's the language your geopolitical partners understand.
Can I just very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, just touch on, and these are obviously important relationships, the relationship with China, the relationship with Russia.
Yes.
President Trump seems to be building a better relationship with Russia. So things move around.
Yes.
But from South Africa's perspective, touch on one or two of these other global relationships.
Our approach in terms of our international policy has always been to play a neutral role and to be non-aligned. And we've played that role throughout. And there are moments when people think that we side with one against the other, but now it's almost becoming more evident that our non-alignment is what is much more appreciable. For instance, we participated in the African Peace Initiative with relation to the Russia-Ukraine war, and in that case we showed that we are non-aligned. We went to Ukraine, we went to Russia, and over time, as South Africa, we've participated in the peace process between Russia and the Ukraine, up to and including just playing a very focused role, for instance, when it came to the release of children. It was only South Africa, really, in some ways working with the United States, of getting the children released. In a very focused way, going through the names and the areas where they were. And that role has continued. And that, in many ways, has demonstrated our non-alignment. As it is now, we are pushing ahead with a peace summit. We say that that war can only be resolved through a peace process. And we talk to both. I remember one time I went to meet President Biden in the White House, and he said, well, can you talk to both of them? And I said, yes, because in the end, at some stage, I think we're one of the very few who could talk to both. And as it is now, President Zelensky will be coming, and we will be putting...
Coming here?
Yes, yeah. We'll be putting the same message that conflict needs to be resolved through negotiations. Initially, he had put conditions, but over time, in working through and working with him in discussions, it's becoming more and more evident that war must end, and it can only end through a negotiation process. And we have said as much to President Putin, we've said as much to President Zelensky as well. And on the African continent, we continue to play an unaligned role as well, and a peacemaker in many of the areas where there are conflicts. So globally, we are a small player, and some people say that we punch above our weight, and some people say we're too noisy. And maybe we are noisy, but we seek to craft peace, but we also seek to advance the interests of South Africans, particularly when it comes to trade, when it comes to investment, and through this we want to continue being an attractive destination.
Geopolitics is a brutal game, and there's been a shift in North America. So Africa must shift as well. So the president was diving into this particular issue of that African positions should be respected to an extent, irrespective of what it is, because the notion that countries can align with a particular partner, of which, like Nelson Mandela once said, your enemy cannot be my enemy. So it is important that the particular position that have been taken by a number of African countries in global events in the past couple of years, as we've seen, does not sit well in the geopolitical circle. That's why they are being questioned. So the president went ahead to explain this particular aspect of it, and that is relevant to Africa's own independence and sovereign decision-making process. Let's roll the clip.
Maybe a final question, just on China, South Africa's relationship with China, but also just the role of China across the African continent. And
well, China has decided to be a big player on the African continent. That we must accept, and we have a very good relationship with China. They are our biggest trading partner as we speak. We sell a lot more to China than to other countries, but we also import a lot from China. And the trade at the moment is a bit unbalanced, and we need to work on that. But they are open and they want to deal with us. And we deal with each other out of deep respect for each other's sovereign standing. So other people get terrified and think that China is going to overwhelm us. But what I have found is the Chinese have great dealings with us out of respect and are able to support us. During COVID, they were hugely supportive when it came to acquisition of personal protective equipment as well as vaccines. And we continue to work very well with them. Of course, they have spread themselves in other places on the continent. They invest in our economy as well in quite a big way.
It is about time that Africa re-strategize, combine value addition, making it stand firm in international issues, making its position clear, communicate in one voice, because Europe at the moment are re-strategizing, calling individual meetings with heads of states, talking on how to face the current geopolitical shift in North America, as we see tariffs flying left and right. We also see a number of things happening in terms of aid cutting. These are challenging times in Africa's own history, and the continent of Africa must move, must make some unpopular movement that will not sit well. This is a time that they should be able to assess every partner's value, put those values on the table, and look, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about technological transfer, financial payment processing? Are we looking at medical innovation? Are we looking at sciences? Are we looking at value addition, like I pointed out? Are we talking about win-win partnership? Are we looking about resource extraction in terms of value, investment, development within the region? What are we talking about here? If we do not actually come up with these particular positions, the geopolitical partners use that particular rod to measure the continent. That's how it works. So if these issues are being raised and actions not taken, then the continent will continue to be on a crossroad. And at this particular time that we see events in the continent of Africa, all of these conflicts going on at the moment, it is important that Europe is preoccupied with its attempt to respond to North America. That relationship does not look so cozy the way experts think, because we've seen French president pushing back to the current United States of America's president, Mr. Donald Trump, in his approach with regards to how he perceives the tariff relationship and a whole lot of very important things that he thinks Europe, to an extent, is intruding the United States of America's development and growth in terms of trade. It is vital that United States of America is pushing China on the other side, and Africa is embracing China from a whole lot of different directions. Like I said, the world has moved and Africa to have to move. If you do not move at this time, like the president said, in taking those very unpopular positions and looking at value addition in our products, if we start creating value in our products in the continent of Africa, it will definitely cause a lot of scarcity in terms of the resources. Some of these countries cannot actually survive to an extent without these resources in those different countries across the region. If you basically start adding value, if you, Africa, looking at countries like Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Cameroon, all of these heavyweights in terms of cocoa production, if they are exporting millions of tons every year or every month, if they decide to export just 500,000 tons, for example, and process the remaining 500 in their own continent, it would definitely create some artificial scarcity, and the conversation will change. It's simple maths. We just have to be ready to go all in it and be ready to make that particular sacrifice. As we have seen countries in the Sahel, despite their independent individual challenges, they have decided to go it alone, to make very unpopular choices for their own people because they can see the geopolitical environment has shifted. So Mr. Ramaphosa talking about value addition and more importantly, talking about Africa taking a particular stand, in this case non-aligned in several areas. Don't get me wrong. The United States have its own partners in the continent of Africa, countries like Angola, Zambia, and Kenya. These countries still have partnership with China as well and Russia. So it's all about win-win. You got to go in for your own interest. And that's what the partners understand. Hopefully the continent of Africa can take value addition and taking its sovereign positions clear. And that way, it will give Africa the credibility that it needs at this global turmoil that we are experiencing. The next 4 years will be a year or a couple of years in history that will remind the continent if it took the right decision at the right time. Drop me a comment. I'll be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.